Welcome to the Apex Racing TV Weekly Roundup podcast, your surefire way of keeping up to date with all of Apex Racing TV's broadcasted series. This week, we discuss the Ricmotech GT Challenge, the ARL Bathurst 2-hour special event, the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series, and the iRacing official NTT Indycar Championship. We also update you on the latest news from iRacing and Apex Racing League. So let's get the podcast started with Sam Fitzpatrick and Marco Barbanera. Welcome back, Marco, to the Apex Racing TV Weekly Roundup podcast. We're back for week 9 of season 1 in the iRacing world, and we're going to have a few series to talk about today across the Ricmotech GT Challenge, the Aussie Mixed and Fixed Series, the Bathurst 2000, the NTT Indycar Official Series, so should all be very good.
It should be, absolutely. Great news also coming from the world of iRacing and of course the race control mystery that has popped up in the last few hours. So plenty of stuff to talk about, Sam, as per usual, by the way.
Absolutely. I think we'll first dive into the Ricmotech GT Challenge. This week, it was at Suzuka. And Marco, whenever I've commentated on this series before, I am a bit of a curse against Aero Nom. So it was a big question. Now that we were going to now that we're going to talk about it, would Aero Nom win out? He didn't get pole position. Caron got pole position in front of him, Andrew Caron, ahead of Nom in the GTE class. Savitich was on pole in the GT3s. And off the start, it was a pretty good start for Caron ahead of Nom. They just held their own. Very clean, in fact, for the entire GTE field. However, in the GT3s, it was not quite so good. So a few notes I've got. Savitich made contact with Rodriguez going through turn 1. That kind of pushed Rodriguez slightly off the circuit. Rodriguez, of course, started in second place. And then Rodriguez's teammate, Guimet, managed to get spun coming out of turn 1. And then his teammate, Mizda, managed to spin into the wall. And then Rodriguez went into the wall. So he had 3 F4H drivers out of 5, all crashing out. And in the end, the full course yellow had to be deployed. So the field was neutralized. And everyone just went round. And that was the first time ever in the series, I think, that full course yellow had to be deployed. So, yeah, it was clearly all those Bathurst flashbacks for the drivers, Marco, because you don't usually see that too much.
I remember a full course yellow in Suzuka, but I think it was the other championship, of course, the what is now the Continental Tire Challenge, which, oh man, I don't remember. The Sports Car Challenge, of course.
Yeah.
But that was back in the days where you basically they were using manual safety cars. So I remember watching the race live because it was I think holiday period or something like that, and I see all these cars running around very slowly, and then I realized the volume was very low. But yeah, so a track that, of course, Suzuka, we are all pretty familiar with. It has been a very good race at the front. I have to say that I've been following the series. I try to stay up as much as I can because this is a very exciting series to watch. It's good to see that there are still some heroes driving the GT3s. I don't know why, but it's like GTE, all iRacing wide, are getting more and more popular than GT3s. Do you think this is because of the fact that iRacing is, let's be honest, doesn't have very up-to-date GT3s compared to their GTs? Because personally, I prefer to drive the GT3s, but in this series, even when it was usually evenly matched, we have a far bigger number of GTs compared to the GT3s. Still, the show is very entertaining, no matter what.
Yeah, it's of course GT3 is very much on iRacing's back burners, I guess, now, saying that other simulators, of course, Sette Corsa Competizione, of course, with the license for GT3s. I still think iRacing can get a few GT3s, but I think that they're probably focusing on other areas such as GT4s, as we've talked about on the podcast previously, and GTs as well. However, saying that, World GT going back to GT3s, I'll be up and running very soon, and of course, Sim Racers World sticking with GT3s. So it's still decently strong, I think. But yeah, you're absolutely right. GT is continuing to go from strength to strength. Certainly, the GT class was the most entertaining and the biggest field out of the Ricmotech GT GT Challenge. Later on in the race, once everything had calmed down with the pace car and stuff, it was a poor start for Acosta. He had a really good start. By the way, I think there may have been sorry. So poor restart for Acosta. He dropped down from 3rd to 9th. So really unlucky for him. He then got in a crash with Ledesma as well. So it was a pretty awful few laps for Acosta. I think he did finish the race at least. Then Mike Dam spun out at 130R from 7th place. It was a rare mistake there, just stepping a wheel onto the AstroTurf and managing to spin into the wall. It was a really good battle between Leicester and Bine for 4th place, meanwhile. Bine had to stay behind Leicester for probably about 10 laps or so before finally being able to get past. And Leicester then proceeded to spin at turn 1. Caden Bine then moved on to Gagno, Renault, for 3rd position and pulled off a superb move around the outside spin. I don't know if you saw it, Marco. It was a really nice move all the way around the outside of Spoon, and that promoted him up into 3rd place.
Oh, it was a fantastic move. Absolutely agree with you. The battling was so close in this fight for 3rd, 4th. Too bad that Luster then, like you were saying, lost contact with the group after his mistake. But it was some fantastic racing. I mean, that's the Ricmotech style of racing we can expect basically every Monday morning here on Apex Racing TV. It was absolutely fantastic. Of course, nice to see these names. For example, Caden has raced with us for sure in British GT, maybe also in American GT, if I'm not mistaken. So he's a driver that we start knowing very well. It's nice to have these drivers from North America starting to trickle in our more European time zone races. But of course, this is their kingdom late at night for us, at least in in Ricmotech. So this was the fight for the podium. In front of the field, it was Caron that was held the lead for well, I would say for basically the entirety of the race, with Aeronom that in the end wasn't really able to close the gap to his rival, and that's I wouldn't say that because Caron is very quick, so I wouldn't say that I was surprised, but in the end, Nom lost a lot of time. I think he was like 15 seconds away, and in the end, it was quite a comfortable win for Caron.
It sure was, and it got worse for Nom as well because, yeah, like you said, he was about 15 seconds behind, falling behind, but at least a 2nd place, would be good points, keep the lead of the championship. However, then he made contact with a GT3 going into the Casio Triangle, or as was it Tyler Maxson, I think, calling it the Casino Triangle, which is another thing. Yeah, so Casio Triangle, he made contact. Got a drive-through penalty for that. Fortunately for him, he only dropped down to 5th place. So again, it's not too bad, 5th place, most drivers would take that. Then he had a car spin in front of him. It was Patton. No, it wasn't Patton. It was it was a driver in front of him anyway. Sorry, Whitworth spun in front of him, going through 130R. Nom couldn't possibly avoid it and crashed into him, crashed into the wall, and he was out. And he finished well down the order, retired from the race. And if there was any doubt whether or not I'm a curse for Aeronom, that very much secured it. By the way, any context, I think going into Virginia last season, didn't think he'd lost a race. I think he'd won every race, like 5 out of 5. And then I watch him, and he gets taken. Well, he spins with a GT3 car on the last lap of the race, and loses the win. And then at Sebring, he finishes in 3rd place. I think his worst finish of the season or something. So apologies, Aero, because you'd probably won before I started watching the broadcast. So apologies for that.
Yeah,
Um,
nothing you could
so,
do there at 130R, by the way. I mean, it was
no,
wrong place at the wrong time, and of course, but it always, sometimes you see this happen when, you know, things start to go bad. You make a mistake, have to serve a penalty, and then from there it basically your race unravels until the inevitable happens. In this case, very Alan McNish style crash there at 130R, but this time not on his own like McNish, but with the help of unwilling help, of course, of that Mercedes GT3 that was spinning.
So really, after that, the only other significant thing happened in the GT3 class. Ignacio Hortel spun out. Patton gave him a slight pat, excuse the pun, and they crashed into one another. So Hortel went from 5th, crashed going into 130R, and that was very bad for him. So also there are 2 brothers. Who was it? Who were the brothers who
Alcrudo
finished really
brothers.
close to one? Alcrude, who were neck and neck across the line. But strangely, one of them's put down Cuban, and one of them's put down American. They are the same team, though, of course. But no, they were battling against one another, and 5th and 6th. I'm sure their parents should be very proud.
Let me have
Of
a look
course.
at the standings because
Yes, I was just looking at the standings.
and
Yeah,
that, yeah,
and then
that is okay. Before we create any kind of uh, political and diplomatic incident, that it's a Puerto Rican flag.
apologies. Okay, well, it's kind of America, isn't
The,
it? Overseas territories and that.
in my opinion, Puerto Rico is should be considered one of the states. There is a long debate, and I know where you come from in the sense that the Puerto Rican flag and the Cuban flag are very, very similar because they are pretty much follow the same scheme with, I think, the color of the triangle where the star is encased being blue for the Puerto Rican flag, red for the Cuban flag, and then the stripes are inverted, red and white for Puerto Rico
Aha,
and
okay.
blue and white for for Cuba. I consider myself a little bit of a vexillologist, an amateur one at that, so I spot these things straight away.
You see, I like to think I'm pretty good at flags, and yet you've absolutely blown my knowledge out of the water for that one. And as someone who studied American politics in A level, I agree with you about the 51st state. I think anyone who studied that knows why it isn't there. Anyway, away from politics, dangerous world. So Karen won, 20 seconds clear of Caden Bine. Dominant performance. Bine had to re-overtake Ian Gagnon Renault actually at Spoon again. It was just like, well, gonna have to do it again, mate. And he totally did it. To be fair, very generous from Bine. They made contact and Bine let him past at that corner. So it was very good. Robert Hartley, a little bit quiet, but it's only just behind in 4th. And of course, the Accrudo brothers in 5th and 6th. In the GT3s or the GTDs, of course, it was Savitich, of course, winning out by a comfortable margin. He was about 10 seconds ahead of Jim List and celeb John Lavender. Anthony Pisano finished in 4th, and Rodriguez recovered to 5th in the end. So it was a pretty good recovery from him after being spun round in the opening lap. In the championship, Marco, I don't know if you got the championship standings in front of you. It's very interesting now because Aeronom has won everything in the Ricmotech Road Series, at least in the past few years. However, he's dropped down a little bit. Only 2nd round of the championship. However, he has dropped down to 3rd position after winning round 1. He only scored 9 points in round 2. That's compared to 35 in round 1, and he now sits 18 points off the lead. Ian Gagnon-Renault leading that one, and Rob Hartley, consistent finishes. I think that's 2 fourth places for him, or maybe a 4th and a 5th, and he's up into 2nd place. So, could have a nice championship going for us here, Marco, because it's become a bit predictable in that class in the past that Aeronom would win out. He was relentless, particularly at the start of the season last season. But this season, he's got a little bit of catching up to do.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, the racing is always great, but if we can add, a little bit of spice to the title race as well, that would be absolutely fantastic.
And in the top 3 as well, Gagnon-Renault is in a Ford, Hartley's in a BMW, and Nom is in a Ferrari. So pretty good. Next highest Porsche is Mike Dan, by the way, in 7th place. If he hadn't have crashed, maybe we'd have 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Apologies. Silly damn fuck. Anyway, Denis Savitich now leads the way in the GTD standings. So 1st and 2nd for him. Brendan Misler won round 1. However, he didn't have such a good round 2, so he sits 10 points behind. And Celeb John Lavender is in 3rd place in that one. A few drivers I don't think we're too aware of. Anthony Pisano as well, of course, in 4th place. We've become familiar with him. But Savitich doing very well at the start of the season there. Marco, have you got any experience of any of these GTD guys, kind of Savitich or Misler, Lavender, List, Whitworth?
The only experience I could have in this case is them lapping me, but because they are absolutely out of my league. But no, unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to race against them. Mostly because I've stayed away from GT racing in the past because I didn't have the license, and until a couple of weeks ago when I got my B license back on the road. So no, but in any case,
You're the same license as me, to be fair. I don't know if that's an insult to myself, to be honest.
I mean, the A license is couple of like 2 iRacing seasons ago. They moved back the IMSA to B, and the Le Mans series, I think it was A, and then they changed back this season to C and B, which is of course I think the best thing to do. But I mostly race D class stuff, so C class sometimes, so it's okay.
Yeah, of course, alternating with this championship each week, of course, is the Sports Car Challenge. We have never covered that on the podcast before. Maybe we'll do that next week. Yeah. I'm not quite sure, but it'd be good to see about that. And I mean, if I watch it, Nom, watch your back, because you're not going to win, mate, because I am a witch, clearly. Remarkable that he's managed to crash out for a round, though, and still in 3rd place in the championship. I think he's going to come back even stronger for round 3 of the season. And of course, you can catch that in a couple of weeks' time, Monday evening. I believe it is 1 GMT, of course, in the morning. So thoroughly recommend watching that. So the second series we'll talk about, what are we going to talk about? We'll talk about the Bathurst 2 hours. That was a difficult decision. Marian Dukic was on pole position for this. First up, Marco, another Apex Racing League special event. Of course, we had the Raw before the 24. We hosted a couple last year as well. It's a pretty good warm-up for the drivers. However, Bathurst is a pretty tricky track, and when you've got 55 odd drivers, you're always running the risk for a few incidents.
Well, it was Bathurst. Let's put it this way, and especially for the first bit of the race, let's say the first half an hour or so, the drivers were really struggling to get a rhythm going. There were mistakes, as it. Oh, by the way, the race was. I want to say congratulations to the organization, because the race was run in broad daylight. It was a beautiful day. I was so
Yes.
happy. Uh, and I have to say that it was a refreshing change from the past editions. Sadly, no one brought home the Barbanera award for crashing on Conrad Strait. There will be time next year, of course, for this you know one of a kind achievement. But back to the serious stuff. When the race got going, it was super interesting. The GT3s had plenty of battles all over the field. Uh, my only regret about this race was that the chaos at the start created a situation where there were plenty of GT3s that had to go to the pits, take some repairs, come back on track, and this broke up the Porsche Cup fight field. So we didn't have a lot of fights in that class, which made me a bit sad because I really wanted to see these Porsche Cup guys fight it out. I think in the end we had only one proper duel between the cars, the Porsche Cup cars. But apart from that, it was mostly solitary running for the Porsche guys. But the GT3s made up for it very well because it was an amazingly entertaining race at the front of the field. I have to say that I enjoyed this event much more than the one last year, also because I was driving last year. But this year it was very, very, very exciting stuff. Drama until the end. A very good warm up for the 12-hour race, and of course, a good companion for the real life 12-hour race, which started a couple of hours after the checkered flag dropped in this one that we organized.
Yes, so it was Mario Djukic on pole position for the race in the GT3s, ahead of Wyatt Gooden. Noel Lundberg was on pole position in the Porsches with Nella in second. It wasn't a good start for Nella. He spun before he even crossed the start line and fell right to the back. It wasn't too bad though. You can bring it back from there. Gooden passed Djukic. We managed to miss that on the broadcast. Apologies. I'm sure it was an incredible move from Gooden, from Wyatt. However, we missed that, so apologies. It was bad news for Djukic though, because then that put him in the line of fire for Mark Fletcher. And anyone who's ever raced against Mark Fletcher, you know he is a liability. Of course, just kidding. He made contact though into turn 2 with Djukic, and Djukic went into the wall and he needed a fast spare. He also made contact later on in the lap, but I think he had enough damage anyway to have to come back to the pits. One fast spare course available for the drivers. So yeah, Djukic came into the pits. We also saw Marco. One of my favourite moments in the race was Mike Donlan, which of course is a name of legend now. He did a 1,000-point turn on the run down the mountain. I'm not sure if you recall this, but he managed to get himself a bit stuck, almost in an escape road, and going down the mountain. It's pretty narrow, and he had to spend about a minute or so trying to get himself out. And there were battles going all on around the circuit, and yet we focused on that, and our hearts were in our mouths a number of occasions.
Well, I think we had a perfect camera shot. I don't know if you did the cameras for this place, but if
I
you
didn't
did,
do that camera, to be fair.
but it
So I
was
can't
like
take the responsibility. iRacing can take that one.
it was the perfect camera shot because it was a fixed camera that was pointing at the general area, and you could see on the right side of the screen the driver trying to make his 1,000-point turn, and the cars coming. And I remember we were cheering on him like, now is the moment, because we of course had the luxury of having the track map on the top right, and then I said go go go, but in reality there was another car coming. Thankfully, he didn't listen to me, also because he could not listen to me. And in the end, in a world where the iRacing world, but any kind of and in iRacing, I still maintain we are the lucky ones because other simulators, it's really not that. It's much worse than this. But in a world, including the racing world, where the usual procedure is I spin slash go on the grass slash go on the gravel, whatever, and the first thing I do is floor it back into the middle of the track. We need to upload such patience to avoid any kind of carnage, take it easy, and go back to the racing line without hurting or harming anyone. It was a magical moment.
It really was. We were cheering for him. And maybe if he had SDK Gaming and their live HUD, which of course you can access via SDK Gaming, you can maybe you would have been able to get by quicker. A small plug there. Apologies. To be fair, he should have just towed back to the pits. He wasted a minute and a half trying to do the 2-point turn. He could, I say 2-point turn, many point turn. He could have just towed back to the pits and probably saved a lot of time instead. But it was good entertainment, certainly. Anyway, elsewhere in the race, Guden was just ahead of Fletcher for pretty much the entire first stint. They pitted about on the hour mark, 2-hour race this, of course. And then he managed to just pull away. Fletcher must have got held up in a bit of traffic, pulled out the gap to 10 seconds. Then we got the cameras on Guden, and it all got a little bit tense, Marco. He was stuck behind a couple of slower GT3 cars, and there were a couple of really tight moments. I think a moment going into the chase where he tried to go 3 wide with these 2 drivers, and then I think a moment, maybe even on the mountain as well, where he had a big slide and almost hit the wall. And this gap was just ebbing away from him every single corner. Fletcher was closing in, and it nearly very much got away from Wyatt Guden. Sorry.
I mean, those moments there were absolutely scary because he didn't really need to take those risks, but he did regardless. And we are usually not very vocal in the commentary booth. I mean, yeah, Austin is. We are a bit less than that. We love you, Austin, by the way. Surely you are listening to us. But yeah, all 3 of us, I remember, were very critical of the big risk. But of course, easy to say from where we are. But at 3 wide there, the chase could have ended up in disaster. So really, really lucky there. Lucky and of course good, Mr. Gooden, no pun intended, as he was able to...
We're on fire today, Marco.
He was able to get away without any kind of significant damage, and in the end, because that was very, 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 very risky business, but he was able to pull off. And of course, like you were anticipating, we had Fletcher trying to follow until he clipped the wall very hard in getting up in the cutting on lap 54. It was like 1 hour and 50. That was big damage. But the mountain kept on, surprising drivers right until the end. I remember, for example, Bolland was having a fantastic race sitting in P5, and then with a couple of minutes left, he went wide at Skyline and basically flipped, after hitting the wall. And then Danes sitting in 6th place behind him, just as he crashed, by the way. Chris Danes also had a big moment there, the cutting, going up the hill, hitting the wall as well, creating a little bit of a roadblock. But in the end, congratulations to the survivors, because this was really an attrition race, and well-deserved win for Gooden and for Lunenburg, of course, in the Porsche Cup car. Again, too bad, because I wanted to see a big fight there in that class, but this doesn't take anything away from our race winner from the Netherlands in the Porsche Cup class, because that was quite a remarkable drive to stay out of trouble. And when you stay out of trouble sometimes, and sometimes that is all you need to do when everyone behind you is involved in some drama.
Yeah, it was really impressive that he kept it clean and was about a minute clear, I think, of second place in the Porsche category by the end of the race. So Wyatt Gooden was, of course, the race winner, as you say, Marco. Tom McMahon in second place, 16 seconds behind. Daniel Krasowski, a driver who we haven't seen too much of, was a solid third, only half a minute off the win. James Saltz had a really fun race, actually, did Salt. Had to overtake a few drivers like Boland, had a good battle with his teammate Atherton, who also crashed late on, and Mario Jukic, after taking a fast repair early on, finished 2 minutes behind in fifth place. It was a nice recovery. And in the Porsches, as you were saying, Marco, race winner was Noel Lundberg. 1 minute and 30 seconds, in fact, it was even more than I thought, ahead of Jeffrey Garzotto. Jeffrey Lewis rounded out the podium, and Ryan Weintraub was the only other finisher in fourth place. So 6 retirees in that class. It wasn't fun being a Porsche out there on the most parts. Of course, future events we'll probably be doing Sebring 2 hours. We're also hoping to do a few more real life events as well. So, Zolder 24 hours, probably not do the full 24 hours, but 4 hours, maybe Britcar, Silverstone 24 hours as well. So a little bit of a mini event of that, Suzuka 1000 potentially. So if you got any ideas and
you just
you want...
you put a dagger in my heart with the Suzuka 1000 because it's
Oh, sorry, Suzuka 10 hours. Apologies.
yeah, because the 1000 sadly has been lost to the has gone the way of the dodo because of course replaced by the 10 hours or is it 8 hours? 10 hours? No, 8
No,
hours is
it's
the
10
bike
hours.
race. It's 10 hours. Yeah, but if we get Super GT, which we will never get, I will be first in line to organize a Suzuka 1000 kilometer race because that was one of my favorite, if not my favorite enduro, and it's not anymore. Replaced by very exciting, very entertaining, but yet another GT3 only endurance event.
Yes. So
I
fingers
sorry if I
crossed.
sound a bit bitter,
Perhaps.
but
No. Well, I mean, you do sound bitter, but it's absolutely fine. I'm sure many people feel the same way. So if there's any other real life events that you want us at Apex Racing League to organize, join our Discord. I'll post a link in the description, and there'll be a channel for that. And you just type in. Everyone will get angry at you, but don't worry, stick by your guns, and maybe we'll include it. And of course, if you're already in the Discord, then just type it in, and we may well take some notice. But yeah, probably Sebring 2 hours of preparation for the 12-hour event. Most likely the next one that we'll host. I'll be in about 3 weeks' time. But yeah, that was the Bathurst 2 hours. Well done to all the drivers. iRacing news then, Marco. You are the man for this, of course, saying that I am 200 miles away from a rig. So the patch finally was released. 7 days late, but certainly worth it, I'm sure. And of course, we have finally got AI on Oval. So how is it?
well, before that, I have to tell you something that uh, came out like 5 minutes ago,
Oh,
and which was not the reason why, of course, behind the scenes we took a 5 minute break, but it was a nice act of serendipity because I picked up my phone and there's been a press release from iRacing because
I've just seen it.
yeah, Coca-Cola to sponsor the NASCAR World Championship, basically. So it's not the peak antifreeze anymore. It's NASCAR iRacing competition refreshed by Coca-Cola, and there will be a $300,000 prize pool instead of the $100,000
Jeez.
available this year. It's a big step up. Select races, so more than one, not only the final will be broadcast on TV on NBCSN. This is some fantastic news and an incredible step forward for iRacing, for NASCAR, and of course with the involvement of the big names, of course, the big teams real life drivers having their teams in the series, real life teams having their teams in the series. Well, that came a bit out of nowhere, I have to say, but it's big news nonetheless for everyone involved in sim racing, us included. Hopefully, I'm always in the hope that this like creates a snowball effect that also brings more attention to other series like the series we broadcast, and really shows that sim racing can be a viable product for television and for entertainment, and especially considering that there are people, not many, but there are people who watch sim racing for entertainment purposes only, that they don't have they don't have a wheel, they don't just that they watch, just like every not everyone that watches Formula 1 is a race car driver. Me, for example, I'm not one of them, but I watch Formula 1, but there are also completely people that are they don't even know how an engine works that watch Formula 1. So maybe this creates some sort of again trickle down effect. Incredible news for iRacing.
Really is. So Coca-Cola, of course, are the title sponsor of the proper NASCAR, aren't they? So I mean that is pretty incredible that they've got that as well. So yeah, well done to Coca-Cola. Appreciate. Are they the title sponsor?
Coca-Cola is the title sponsor of the iRacing series, but so far, unbelievably, with the Clash being 1 week away, NASCAR doesn't have a sponsor.
Oh, were they sponsoring it last season then?
No, Monster Energy was the sponsor.
Okay, apologies.
If you noticed in the release
my
notes,
drinks mixed up.
Don't worry, in the release notes for the latest update of iRacing, they changed the name of the cars from the Monster Energy Cup Ford Mustang to the NASCAR Cup Ford Mustang, for example. But yeah, I mean, hopefully a situation, because it's very sad that NASCAR doesn't have a sponsor, but that's another story. Fantastic news. So one can look it this way. Can look the way that that the real NASCAR doesn't have a title sponsor, but virtual NASCAR has.
Yes. And it's a lot cheaper as well on iRacing rather than real life, so we do recommend it. And of course, it's only a matter of time till you see a lot more drivers from iRacing getting into the Cup Series in real life. I'm sure that will be a boost as well. So yeah, it's mega impressive. That's 300 grand. Very nice. It's increased a lot. I mean, it used to only be, was it like 30 grand or something a few years ago? It used to be on par with the Road Series, I think. And now it's up to 300,000. So quite superb that. So yeah, well done to iRacing for negotiating that one. And of course, yeah, tying into that then, awesome week for iRacing NASCAR because like I was saying before, we've got AI now on the Cup cars. How would you say they are, Marco? The Road Series have got a lot of positivity. How would you say the oval stuff is matching up?
So I have to say that the drivers behave very, very smartly. Of course, Daytona and Talladega are two unique tracks, so to give a more complete judgment, I wait for some more regular ovals, 1.5 milers or a Bristol to be released. They play the draft game very, very well. One thing I've noticed, they don't really if you, for example, try to do a single file restart, which is not in the NASCAR rulebook, but I like experimenting with stuff. They don't stay in line, but when the green flag drops, they start forming the inside middle lane and the top lane. I haven't seen a lot of moves from the drivers. I've seen some drivers like move up, trying to form a fourth lane. Usually they get shuffled to the back, but if you are in the lead, like a 30 lap race with no pit stops, because you cannot limit the size of the tank, I will have to try that maybe when I have a bit more time. The drivers that are at the front tend to stay at the front. It's nice to see some drivers lose the draft and start to fall back. I tried these cars on the road. AI doesn't really like Okayama. First corner they go happily in the grass and smash into the wall. I don't know if that. I think that is something they have to. But as far as like racing, like Sunday there is the majors 2.4. No, sorry, the majors 500, Daytona 500, and this is perfect for testing this. Before this, you had no idea on how to set up your car for a super speedway, because you can set the car however you want, but the real test is in traffic with 40 cars in front of you. See how it works in the draft. See if you can make moves. This is a massive, massive change. Thanks to trading paints, you can click a button on trading paints and a car set with the real drivers, the real liveries, and the real driver abilities from 2019 and 2020 already in some cases. You find it in your sim, so that you can race against a full field of real NASCAR drivers with the real liveries. It is a pleasure, a joy to behold. Cannot wait for more, to be honest. I cannot wait for some proper ovals to see the way they battle in a more, non super speedway kind of environment. But as a first step, I have two big thumbs up, as I've said many times in these past few weeks.
Absolutely. So it's great news that that's been well received. Any other stuff which was released? Of course, a few circuits, as you're saying, Okayama now available to use as AI. But was it just AI focused, or was there anything else released?
Well, we had, it was some maintenance stuff. Of course, we had the Sebring Club circuit, which has been released for AI consumption, so to speak. Various AI changes. They added a full course. Finally, the full course caution with laps that don't count, which has been announced for the 2020 Season 1 release. This is the way cautions work in Dirt Oval. So caution flag drops, laps don't adapt. So if the caution drops on lap 15, it stays lap 15. Then it has been removed and put back again, then removed again. Now it has been put on again. So hopefully this time for good, which is very interesting. There's been a couple of changes to the wind calculations. Nothing major. They updated the transmission of the Jetta and the Audi RS3 because they share the same kind of transmission, the DSG gearbox. A bit of changes in the V7 tires for the oval cars, and some changes to a couple of ovals, and they fixed the dreadful cut track problems in Barcelona Historic, where you could cut quite a bit of the racetrack without any kind of penalty. And then, of course, the most important change of them all, the oval at Gateway Motorsports Park, has been renamed to Worldwide Technology Raceway, which is, I think, it's yeah, not good. This was released yesterday, the 4th of February in the afternoon, and lo and behold, drama strikes the iRacing community because apparently there is a bug, race control issue if you go on the iRacing website. Now there are various theories on this. I guess, Sam, it's like if we put 10 people in a room, I tell you one story, and then you tell to the next person, and then the next person, on and on. When the story comes back to me, it is completely different. No, I have heard people's. So the official post from iRacing says that there is an issue on tracks where the rolling start takes place, and the rolling start, the start finish line are separate. For example, like Imola, no? Where you or Monza, the finish line is at the beginning of the straight, and the start line is at the end of the straight, more or less. This puts basically shuffles the field. The leader gets put one lap down. Now I've heard people say that no, it's not like this. It's if you finish third in a field of 10 cars, then you are put into seventh place at the end of the race. I've heard people say that this changes the starting grid, but not the end result of the race. I mean, so yeah, conspiracy theories are running wild. I have no idea. I stick with the iRacing official explanation. So until further notice, BMW Challenge, Global Challenge, Formula Sprint, IMSA, both IMSA Series, Le Mans Series, and both VRS GT Series have been suspended, and I'm very sad because I wanted to race a bit of but good news, which is of this moment. Today, the 5th of February, at 16 GMT, if I'm not mistaken, the hotfix will come out. Hopefully, it is a quick one and it doesn't affect any series that plans on racing on this Wednesday night, because with the racing, sometimes it can stay down for half an hour and sometimes it can stay down for 5 hours. So my hope is that this is not related to the caution flags that don't count for the lap count, because the dirt community will be a bit upset if that is going to be the case. But yeah, so and also we talked about just to close the discussion. We talked in the previous episode or the episode before that. I think 2 episodes ago, we were talking. We were talking about the fact that since the new build, I noticed on several broadcasts, not only our on Apex, but also other broadcasters, this weird effect with the cars, especially with the V8s, popping out and in of existence, changing the shape, cars losing details and then popping back into detail when they come close to the camera. Apparently, racing changed. Not apparently, racing changed the way the level of detail works to help, especially VR users, but also users with a bad computer. Not very good performing
I feel like
system.
you're talking to me here, Mark. Okay.
That's what,
keep out the aggro, yeah.
That's why I rephrased it. Not particular, not computer not very particularly high performance. So to help these people, they made a change. They put a setting into the INI files that you can change. That changes the level of tolerance, basically, of the LOD level of detail. But I was going crazy because I couldn't find anything in the release notes. And so I thought I was going mad. I was going crazy. But no, today I found out one of the racing staff members in a random forum thread. Thankfully, I had the time to scroll through this stuff because I never really give up. Said, oh yeah, we changed this. If you want to go back to the previous level, just put a 0 instead of 4 in this line of text. Problem solved, but I had a couple of sleepless nights about this. So the next Euro V8 broadcast on Saturday, you will see those cars in all of their glory, and that makes me very, very happy. Also, the same will apply for the AOSC, of course, because I saw that race was plagued as well. Plagued is a bad word, but you cannot, once you notice it, you cannot unnotice it. And I'm happy to report that also drivers are back into the second half of the skip barber field, because usually you had like the first 10 cars with a driver and the other 10 cars of a 20 car skip barber field, driverless. They were Tesla autopilot skippies. So everything is back to normal.
Awesome. So yeah, good that iRacing getting on top of these issues. In terms of Apex Racing League, big announcement, Marco. Of course, the Sunday GT Championship is coming back. Anyone who hasn't seen it, the Apex Racing League GT Championship, as it will now be called, because there isn't a proper theme, so I couldn't name it British GT or American GT. Instead, it's a mix of stuff. So it's all GTE cars. I guess we could have called it Apex Racing League GTE. Doesn't work. We'll keep it just GT. So yeah, all GTE cars, Pro and Am. 8 rounds. Watkins Glen, Road Atlanta, Sebring, Kota. Oh, that's not good. But it's from WEC. Basically, we've got the last 5 rounds are all WEC rounds. So then Silverstone, Nürburgring, Spa, and a pretty cool season finale, I think, Le Mans. Those last few rounds could change a little bit if we could tie them into the official series at all. So that is not absolutely confirmed, but that is probably how it will line up for the championship, and will be starting on the 23rd of February. So just 2.5 weeks away. Of course, 20 GMT starts for that. 2 races. First race 25 minutes, 5 minutes longer than previously, and still a 40-minute second race. Reverse grids, of course, for the second race. You got a teams championship consisting of 3 drivers. You got a fast repair. All of the races will be broadcast by us on Apex Racing TV. We'll be using trading paints. There's a new point system. There's a new penalty system. There's prizes with trophies and stuff. And it all costs £20 to enter, excluding VAT. So if you're from America or a tax haven place, lucky you, you've just saved yourself £4 or something, maybe even £5 in some countries. So really, there is no excuse not to join whatsoever. Marco, you, of course, we covered the British GT Championship as well. No GT4 cars yet. We might bring back the British GT Championship at some point. But for now, we decided to go for a single class, and I'm really looking forward to it. We've eked up the length of the championship as well to 8 rounds. But it's quite nice now at this point how we're going to have better retention, because we've got a set number of drivers who we can absolutely count on, who have become big fans of this Sunday GT kind of a championship type thing. And it's nice that we now know these drivers really well. They've gone from strangers, and now they've got a little bit of history to this Sunday GT championship.
It went, starting from the British GT that we were talking about earlier. It basically filled a void, because Sunday night usually is not a very prominent racing iRacing night. But it filled a nice niche that was underused, and it has grown from there. I'm very, very happy about it. The way you guys set up the schedule, it's super interesting, because every race will have sort of a real life relevance, and so that is absolutely great. But yes, I ask you now that when the time is right, we bring back British GT with GT3 and GT4,
Yes.
because we were so much talking about how good would this be with GT4, but we don't have it, so Porsche Cup cars. And that was before it was announced, the Cayman GT4, so maybe they listen to us. I don't know. But yeah, I think it has to, at least for one shot, it has to come back for another beautiful mini season like we did the first time around for British GT.
Yeah, I think you may well be on to something there, Marco. One driver, I think, I forget who it is absolutely mad about British GT. When I put up a poll about what series would you like to see, just in all capital letters with a few exclamation marks, with an option with just the other option as such, British GT. So we know that we've got a few drivers involved. Of course, I basically didn't have the patience to wait for the GT4 to be released. So maybe after this one we will do it. So that will probably be May. But sign up for this championship instead for now. 2 months long, of course. GTE cars, couple of breaks in there as well. First 4 rounds American, final 4 rounds European, and it should be a lots of fun. So you can catch that, of course, on Apex Racing TV in 2.5 weeks' time. The final 2 series we will talk about will be the IndyCar, the NTT Indycar official series, along with the what other series have we got to talk about? We've got to talk about Aussie Mixed and Fixed, obviously. We'll talk about Aussie Mixed and Fixed first. Was like when I was describing this race earlier on to Marco before we went on air, I said it was 2008 Melbourne-esque with a lot of safety cars. It was absolute chaos up there. So before the race even started, it wasn't going brilliantly. Of course, race management system, race management service, sorry, a brilliant product. Check them out on Facebook, and you can. It's really useful for setting up sessions. However, we did go slightly wrong because the enduro race had to be cancelled because the session wasn't going up. I believe that may be an iRacing issue. I'm not quite sure. But it was meant to be 90 minutes long, maybe an endurance event, instead 45 minutes long for the drivers. However, still, Nash was on pole position alongside Dominic Ferraris on the front row of the grid. I believe he was on pole position. They were alongside, and they didn't really seem to obey by the green flag. There didn't seem to be the pole sit so clearly ahead. But I think it was Nash then on pole position ahead of Ferraris. However, on about lap 4 or so first few laps, absolutely fine. All GTE cars. And on lap 4, though, the top 2 were pulling away, and Ferraris just gave Nash a little bit of a tap at Forest Elbow. In fact, it was quite a big tap. And he spun round, and the entire circuit was blocked round a blind corner, and predictably, everyone piled in. Sometimes safety cars in this series are released quite liberally, just not too much has to cause them. That was a very good reason for a safety car. I recommend watching the broadcast. It's only 45 minutes, like I said, not 90 minutes. And the start of the race was absolutely crazy. Really hurt Ferraris quite a bit. The pace car was released. However, the big beneficiary of it was Nash, pretty much, because he managed to get clear despite being the first car involved. He managed to get clear whilst everyone else was stuck. A few other drivers managed to benefit as well. But that's what we see at Bathurst. And of course, we've got the 12 hours coming up very soon, Marco. You're not taking part in the 12 hours. I'm sure you've got some teammates or some friends who are taking part. Hopefully, in none of the splits, we see any pile-ups like that, because if that happens, there's very little you can do about it.
No, there is nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's terrible, but it's also the fascinating thing about this track, where if you can do everything perfectly and still end up with a problem. Or in the case of Brady Nash, he was able to sneak past the drama and bring home the race victory. I was following the drama from outside. I don't know. To be honest, I have no. I don't know this software here that they use, but it was a good decision on the fly to switch to a 45-minute event. I think they will do basically they will make up the next round will be enduro in order to make it to make up for the missing enduro of this race here. Let's say that Bathurst is one of those tracks you can when you put it on your schedule, it's good. It's stuff like this is going to happen. There is, you know, not a lot that you can do about it. But that's why we put it on the schedule. It's a big test of drivers' skill, reflexes, and of course the most important component, luck.
Yes, and a few drivers certainly had that. Like I said, it was good for Nash in the end. He managed to get back to the pits, take his fast repair. Only one pit stop needed for the drivers, so they could pit that early on, and then they were clear for the rest of the race. So that worked out pretty well for him. Vlok, though, took the lead. I don't think Vlok came into the pits. Also, his team was Ford Zilla, which is it's a good name. I'm not sure if he had any teammates. I'm not sure if anyone would be willing to run that team name, but well done to Vlog. Didn't end very well for him because he was overtaken straight away by Nash going into turn 1 and Vugia. However, then he was being overtaken by Morris. There's two Morrises out there. I'm not sure which Morris it was. Apologies. And they collided through the quick right-left, pretty much at the top of the mountain. And another pileup, guess what? And that was straight after the pace car as well. So they all had to behind the safety car again. Wasn't going good. Then, a few minutes later, there was another collision between Best and Gregory. Blocked the circuit for a third time. That time was at turn 4. So that was pretty bad. So a third pace car. And then the last 15 minutes were all clean. And it was a nice battle actually between Rugia, who was having to defend from Burden and Herpats. Burden managed to get past with a pretty good move. Herpats, though, was stuck. He spun at turn 4 as well and pretty much was scared of getting back underway. So waited for a good 30 seconds for the field to get past him. And even then, I think he felt like the car's probably a bit damaged anyway. So he towed back to the pits. So that was a top 5 finish gone for him. And then Burden, who was on an absolute charge, had just got past Rugia. He managed to get past Court on the penultimate lap for P2 at the chase. So it was very impressive from him. So in the end, the race winner was Braden Nash, despite that early contact with Dominic Ferraris, who retired from the race in the end. Josh Burden finished in second place, about 5 seconds behind. Alex Court was in third, then it was Rugia, and Michael Yip was in fifth. Of course, you got 4 classes in that. You got like the Pro, and then the Pro-Am, the Am, and the Rookies. They might not precisely be called that, but there's certainly 4 classes like that. And Nash was winner of the Pro-Ams. Burden was the winner of the Pros. Then you had Gamble, the winner of the Amateurs, and you had Shane Best, the winner of the Rookies. So well done to those guys. In the championship, it took me a while to get the standings up, but I did eventually find them. Neil Pearson is currently leading the way in the championship, despite being a Pro-Am driver. He's beating all the Pro drivers ahead of Aidan Luthwaite. There's Leigh Vandenberg, I believe, a real-life driver, of course. Matt Morris is in 4th, and Scott Gamble is in 5th. Few drivers, though, missing the occasional round. So Matt Morris and Scott Gamble, I believe, the effective leaders in the championship. But it's lining up pretty well, Mark. Last season, we saw the championship go down to the last corner. Looking at the standings at the moment, and when I was watching that race, it's very difficult to pick out a champion for this season as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the drama last year was unbelievable. I think that this championship is still one of the best organized series that we had because because of the fact that they provide the fixed setups for all the cars, and if I'm not mistaken, they have multiple splits, so plenty of drivers signed up. Of course, we broadcast the top split, so that's at the beginning of the broadcast. You see all these drivers, and they say, where do they all fit in one championship? And it's because they have the different splits. Yeah, I mean, and they seem like they never stop, like they are racing non-stop since they came on board with us with Apex Racing TV. So certainly one of the most pleasant discoveries of 2019 for me, and hopefully for many more seasons to come on our channel. Well, of course now they are on the iRacing Esports Network, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of views on that as well, about 1.2 thousand views, which considering that's round 5 of the season as well. Usually it drops off a little bit, but that is absolutely terrific. And yeah, you can catch the next round of that, I believe, on Sunday. So I recommend checking that one. That is the Aussie Mixed and Fixed Series. Catch it on the iRacing Esports Network at 11 GMT on Sunday. Finally, Marco, we will talk about the NTT Indycar series, the official iRacing series. I believe it was from Motegi. Now, was it at night?
Not because the oval doesn't have night lights, so yeah.
Thank goodness. Okay, so that's a relief. Because, yeah, I won't go into it. But yeah, how was it? Because that's not a normal circuit that people use in real life or at least in world motorsport in real life, or in iRacing. How was the over? It's a bit of a weird one. Very vastly different corners on that.
Exactly. I mean, the turn 1 and 2, wide, flat out, long arching corner. And then 3 and 4, you have to brake, go down 2 to 3 gears. And it's a very, very tight line and super careful on the gas pedal when you go out for the start finish line. Of course, the track temperature was very very high, made it very difficult to go in a long run. But the fact that you had, we had the same problem with the high track temps in the last oval we did in Homestead. But here it was a bit different because in 3 and 4, the fact that you had to brake, go down a couple of gears, if not 3, you still could somehow make it work. Now, of course, this is not the most popular oval in iRacing, but we had 2 splits that really surprised me, made me very, 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 very happy. And yeah, I hope that one day iRacing gives us the I don't know, they will have to rewrite the code of but technically we could have 2 races going on at once, because the oval and the road course never intersect each other. So that is a wild dream of mine. I have no idea how they could make this work, system-wise. But yeah, great track, great oval. Sadly, not in use anymore. We are getting closer and closer to the 10-year anniversary of the closure of this racetrack, at least of the oval portion. Road course, of course, no pun intended, still being used by several categories, but the oval, after the Great Tohoku earthquake of 2011, has been deemed not worthy of repair. The only oval series that was coming there was IndyCar, and I don't think they had the idea of coming back anymore to Japan. So yeah, thankfully it's one of those places that I'm thankful we have it on iRacing and we can race there, preserved forever in a laser scanned format. Race was great, by the way, fantastic race. Driver that made his debut last week in the series, in the championship, Philip Krause, managed to bring home the victory in front of Simon Bryant, who is keeping a very very a good streak of great finishes on ovals, and John Downing finished in third. We had a couple of cautions. This track really caught out a couple of drivers, especially the turn 3 braking area. There was a crash between the two Canadians, Bourdon and Lemlen, where Lemlen was the victim in this case, and at the worst of it, because he was sent flying into the wall, whilst Bourdon just got a little bit of front wing damage that he was able to repair, and also a couple of contacts with the wall coming out of turn 2, especially the more you go in the tire run, the more you think you can do it flat out, but then you can't because the tires are getting worn and because you have dirty air from the car in front. But it was a very exciting race. We had a fantastic fight for fourth place, which Scott Sims was able to beat Andreas Eich by around 30, sorry, 3 of a second. Yes. Always tough. It was basically a very very close call, and so Sims and Ike rounded up the top five. But so happy for Philip Cross because he's recently started doing this together with you might remember an old friend of ours, Niklas Rasmussen. They are of the same team. Niklas Rasmussen is also racing on and off in this championship with especially on the road courses. And but Philip is has shown that he is already very 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 quick and certainly forced to be reckoned with in the final. Final 4 rounds of the championship, and what a final 4 rounds we have. Especially, I'm very excited because on Friday, this Friday, we will be racing in Sebring Modified, which is a track that IndyCar in real life uses for the pre-season testing. It's going to be absolutely great. I love when we are able to somehow follow real life stuff for the official series, and a track I have never raced on, the modified version. I've never seen a race on, so this is going to be a first for me. And the drivers, I think, are already hard at work because the bumps are going to be, going to make for quite a show for us and for them.
Yeah, that's going to be a unique circuit, and yeah, it's not a circuit used a whole lot. However, the areas of the circuit that it includes should be quite a fast sweeping track. And of course, as you say, Marco, very bumpy for those high-powered single seaters. Was there no Adam Blocker this week? He's usually quite regular in the Friday night split. But was he not there? I see he's still the championship leader, though.
Yeah, no Adam Blocker, no, there was no Henry Bennett. Maybe I think these drivers were surprised by the fact that it split. I think they were expecting a single split race, so they didn't they picked this as a drop week. There were some familiar names, but also some less familiar names, which is all the good because I like to have new names and to give them the chance to shine on a live broadcast. Again, it is a strange track. This one. It is usually if you buy it, you are either a die-hard oval racer, IndyCar racer, because NASCAR never races here. They did in real life in exhibition races, but I don't think I've ever seen one of the big three NASCAR series run around here. But most of the times, if you buy this, you are a road course driver because this track is present in um, especially in the GT series or the Le Mans series. No? So sometimes you can, and it's a track that has very lot of variant you can use, of course, also in the smaller formula because, of course, it has shorter layouts available. So I think that it is going to be back to more familiar looking grid. That's nothing to take away from this grid, which gave us one of the best races of the season. And the crowd, aka the YouTube chat, was very appreciating of the show they put on.
Awesome. Well, that's the NTT Indycar official iRacing series, and you can catch that next Friday then, or this Friday, every Friday for a while longer, and maybe even next season as well. Could be some changes for that. Some very good changes potentially. And so you catch that on Friday at what is it, 20 GMT?
20 GMT.
Awesome. See you then. So finally, we will talk about what's happening next week, Marco. Now, last week we got really excited about World GT. However, in the end, the media day wasn't broadcasted. So next week, World GT round 1. It starts in proper. That's going to be pretty great. Will be fascinating to see which drivers turn up. One of the best things about World GT, I'd say, is the fact that we've constantly got drivers who are very established in the series that we know from that series, and they always come back and are very competitive. However, you've got drivers from other series that we broadcast, for example, the old BSR TC, now the ARL TC, and many other series that we broadcast, and they, dip their toe into GT racing as well. Who knows who's going to be at the front? But of course, Nicole Foggy, Josh Thompson, Mark Fletcher, Keith Camilleri, who I think won it last season, gonna be mega competitive, I'm sure.
That's the beauty of World GT. You are absolutely right. There is a tough competition. Yes, you have the couple of enduro rounds, but most of the season is short races where you cannot afford any kind of mistakes. And of course, the switch back to GT3s will make for some interesting dynamics that are going to change, I think. So, a season that I wouldn't want to miss. And also next week, if I am not mistaken, we have the media day of the Sim Racers World GT Pro Series. Right. That will be from the lovely circuit of Okayama, the 12th of February. Hopefully we are going to broadcast that. And then, of course, oh no dear. Then the first round is in Daytona Road Course. Okay.
Oh dear. Why can't every round be at Okayama? It's such a good circuit.
I thought that for the next 3 or 4 months I would be okay with Daytona, like no more Daytona Road Course. Not going to work.
No.
But the schedule is fantastic. Mount Panorama, then Sebring, Glen, Zolder, Monza, Motegi. Hopefully not at night. Zandvoort.
It probably will be.
Nordschleife, unfortunately. Road America, Brands Hatch, and of course back to the tradition of finishing the season at Spa-Francorchamps. So great schedule there.
Absolutely. Brands Hatch back on the lineup. Was absent last season, but is back for this season, which is really good. And Okayama, that'll be a brilliant round, I'm sure. I was looking at the ILMS forums yesterday, and it's absolute turmoil in there in terms of what the schedule should be like. Personally, I'm very much against the ILMS schedule because it's the same tracks every single season. Why not have a round at Okayama? I mean, yes. that would probably work, wouldn't it? It would work better than a lot of circuits.
It hosted Formula One, so why in real life? Yeah. So why it cannot host Le Mans Series?
Exactly. Anyway, enough from the pro Okayama fan base. We will. What other? Of course, we've got AOSC. Check that out, and that is going to be at Summit Point as well.
Yes.
So it'll be a sprint race around Summit Point. We've done a camera pack for it, so you can see those 2007 trees in all their glory. Of course, a little bit of a existential crisis there. They're probably all being knocked down now, so that's all good. But no, that will be really good, Marco. We've had a few terrific rounds of the AOSC. So far, only one sprint round, overtaking though around Summit Point. How do you reckon it's going to be? Do you think overtaking is going to be possible, or do you think it's going to be a bit of a procession out there?
Depends on how much the drivers are willing to risk and how much of a. I've seen that race control is pretty active. Let's see how lenient they will be, because I think that that front stretch is not enough to get, unless you have a beautiful run and the driver in front of you has a very bad run. It is tough to get a nice speed, over speed, and overlap your opponent and dive into turn one, because let's be honest, that is the only passing opportunity of the lap. On all the rest of the lap, it is basically you are in the hands of the driver in front of you. In order to pass him, he has to make a mistake. So we will see. But I hope the drivers give us some nice jumps at the end of the race, because there are a couple of launching pads on the right of the start finish line. Yeah, so.
And hopefully we don't get back on the not iRacing top 10 highlights and have a car swallowed up by the trees, because there are no barriers around that track.
No, there are not.
And yeah, we'll be. I can't remember ever broadcasting on Summit Point, I must say. It's an underused circuit, but credit to the AOSC.
We raced there. Euro V8s. Couple of seasons ago.
Oh yeah, the super sprints. Yep. Yeah, I remember Brandon did well. Yep, now season 5. So apart from that, not too many times. So credit to the AOSC, which is an incredibly professional league, one of the absolute best leagues in all of iRacing, and they're willing to race around Summit Point. So I congratulate them on that one. I'm certainly looking forward to that one. Hopefully you'll catch it. And if you like this podcast, please leave a like and subscribe to Apex Racing TV and subscribe to the iRacing Esports Network, because obviously AOSC is on the Esports Network. We've got Aussie Mixed and Fixed, and we've got World GT, and we've got Sim Racers World as well, all on the iRacing Esports Network. So you've got to subscribe to it in order to catch some of our best series. However, I've been Sam Fitzpatrick, alongside me, Marco Barbonet. Hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast, and we'll be back next week for another one.